The 2024-25 New Jersey Devils season did end this past week in that Game 5 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. 5-4 in overtime. I mean, starting with that game, what a game, really. 3-0 in 10 minutes for the Devils. Starts to feel like maybe they'll force a Game 6 and give their fans one last game to appreciate that. Maybe they won't even win that Game 6, but they'll force a Game 6 and they'll get back into it. But right towards the end of that first period, there's a shout from the fans that they missed a tripping call, and then about 20 or so seconds later, there's a puck that goes in the air. Cody Glass collides with Shane Gostisbehere. Seemed like a 50-50 puck. I don't know. Refs give it 2 minutes, and that call was ridiculous. On the carry overtime, that call was actually unbelievable. On the carry overtime in the start of the second period, Carolina scores, or maybe it was just as the penalty expired. Carolina scored. It was like it may have been. It was a power play. Right before it expired. I think it was still on the power play. Either way, but regardless. Either way, the momentum that Carolina started in the second period, which they were devoid of entirely in the first period because the Devils just smothered them, was something of a gift from the officials. But, you get a power play doesn't mean you're going to score. Look at the New Jersey Devils, right? They got power plays, and all that kept doing was giving the Hurricanes more momentum, especially when they play games in their building in Raleigh at Lenovo Center. They can't win in Raleigh. If you give the Devils a power play, what's going to happen is in 2 minutes from now, the crowd is just going to get fully behind the Hurricanes for having killed it off. So that started it all. Did it go fully over? I think the power play went fully over. They did not score a single power play goal. I think they went 0 for 16, maybe 17. Maybe 15. It was around there in the playoffs. That's like Rangers type stuff. The Hurricanes had the best penalty kill in the NHL in the regular season this year. Literally the number one kill. But that shouldn't have mattered because the Devils had one of the better, if not the best power play. At times, certainly the best power play in the league. Yes. They did. It just goes away. To end the season, they had the best power play in the league. Following Jack Hughes' injury, actually, the Devils had the best power play, which is hard to believe, right? But there was another big player missing on the power play for New Jersey this series, and that was a guy who got injured in Game 1, and that's Luke Hughes. Had been quarterbacking the first power play unit for New Jersey. Dougie Hamilton, who's been dealing with a knee injury all season, used to have that role, has not been very successful in that role. I think that was proven in the playoffs. I thought Simone Nemec did a better job than Dougie ever did in this series of quarterbacking the power play. Luke Hughes was a big miss. Jack Hughes was a big miss. But that Hurricanes penalty kill, their special teams, their power play even, just remarkable in how they find a way to just put other teams into uncomfortable situations. And the Devils did still put some excellent kills together, though. They absolutely did, and they had to a lot, especially in that overtime game in Game 3, where they just kept taking penalties at the end. And I'm sitting up there in the press box, and I'm ripping my hair out that they're taking minute-and-a-half shifts in their own zone, and they can't get the puck out. They keep trying to flip it through the center. The guys use the glass. Just use the glass. What's so annoying about this series too is that Game 3 took so much energy out of the Devils. The D-men that game were playing shorthanded with the injuries. Like Brian Dumoulin was taking like 2 or 3 minute shifts at a time, and he was doing great. But then you come into Game 4, how is anybody supposed to have the legs to play another game? Obviously, the Hurricanes were also out there, but the problem is the Devils were the ones who were skating with the initiative for the entire back end of Game 3, trying to get the win. Meanwhile, the Hurricanes are pretty much just trying to survive because they already have a 2-game lead in the series. A loss is okay there. Yeah. And it turned out to be fine for them because by the time they got to Game 4, the Hurricanes were fresher and the Devils were still panting from Game 3. Let's go through each of the games then, because this is one of our local teams, if you will. Game 1, Carolina was all over them. Dominated. That shorthanded goal from Jordan Martinook, who has always had the Devils' number, whether regular season playoffs, he's a Devil killer. His stats against the Devils in the playoffs alone are ridiculous. I wish I had him in front of me, but it's actually unreal. He scores at least a point almost every time he plays the Devils in the postseason. It's really bad. And it's not even just 4 or 5 games or something. It's bad. It's always he's played against the Devils a lot. Too. That's the thing with the Devils. There are just a number of middle six role playing guys who just absolutely dominate. Boone Jenner is one on Columbus. Oh my God! I hate Boone Jenner with a passion.
Jordan, how do you hate Boone Jennings?
Because he always kills the
dogs
Devils.
the Devils every
such a
time.
likable player.
That's the thing. He just makes the Devils miserable. So Jordan Martinook in 10 career playoff games against the Devils has 4 goals, 9 assists, and a +6.
Wait, say that again?
4 goals, 9 assists in 10 games against the Devils. He got 13 points. That's ridiculous.
Jordan
man.
Martinook.
This is Jordan Martinook. Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
I think he had about 13 points in the regular season, and then let alone in his career against the playoffs and against the Devils in the playoffs.
That's where you make your name.
Yeah, I mean,
Barkley Goodrow.
he's that guy. He didn't have a point in games 3, 4, or 5, ironically enough.
Oh.
But that game set the tone. It was very clear. Not only were the Devils a step behind in terms of their organization and the way that they wanted to play, but it was clear like they were a gear behind.
Yeah.
And then when the injuries began to pile up, Brendan Dillon, Luke Hughes and Jack Hughes, of course, and then
I mean,
in
they
game
started
3,
the series no Siegenthaler.
Right, no Siegenthaler.
And
as
Cody
well.
Glass gets slashed by Jacob Markstrom.
Forgot about that one. There's too many. There's just too many. And by the way, you've got Brett Pesce, who's playing on some sort of injury.
Yeah,
You've
he was
got
playing
Dougie
on, like,
Hamilton
one leg.
playing on the knee. You've got a lot of wounded warriors out there trying to sort things out. But then in game 2, they kind of show life. They prove that they belong in this series, and there's a fight to be won here. And they went into game 3 at the Rock with that belief. And I'll tell you, that was the loudest I've heard that building in a long time.
The Devils fans were waiting. They were waiting for some good playoff success. I mean, they had that taste with the Rangers in
all right.
23,
We don't need to talk
but
about that. I get it.
I mean, yeah, there were some loud moments.
I'll tell you
in the
what.
Rock
Was
this
it louder
year.
than that series?
It was louder than that series because part of what makes
They're getting hungrier.
part of what makes Devils Rangers
They're
so
like starved
special
for
in the
that.
playoffs
Yeah.
is that
It's all Rangers fans at the
there's
benches.
no home ice on either side. You're gonna get a ton of Devils fans at the Garden, and you're gonna get a ton of Rangers fans at the Rock for a playoff series, and that's exactly what happened. I went to Game 4 Devils Rangers at the Garden in 2023. That game was played entirely within the blue lines.
Yeah.
That was not an incredible loud atmosphere because of the way that game was played.
It was also that game was like a 3-1. It was like
3-1.
a really close game.
It was a 1-0 game, and the Rangers were trying to get into it, and then in the third, Trocheck scored.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
and then
yeah.
the crowd was taken out of it because of the way that was played. This Devils Hurricanes game was up the whole time.
Really? Yeah.
And
Game 3 was like that too, because I remember I made friends with a Devils fan because Daniel Jones was shown on the screen, and if you don't know about Daniel Jones, I'm his only supporter.
Right.
And I was said something about that's my quarterback, and I made friends with a Devils fan in front of me. It was really
this
wholesome.
at Game 3 at the Garden in 23?
Like the Dougie Hamilton
the OT
overtime
game?
winner. Yeah.
Ooh.
That must have been a much better atmosphere than what Game 4 was for me.
It was still it was a 2-1 game
Yeah.
because I think Kreider scored and then Hughes scored
Yeah,
on the power
Kreider
play.
had the snipe,
So it was
yeah.
it was kind of silent.
I
There was
remember
too much
that.
tension in the air. But anyways, yeah.
So that's what made that series different. This one is it's a bunch of Devils fans
Excited,
who are begging their team to score a goal because they don't want to.
Yeah, they barely even care about actually winning
Yeah,
this
it was
season. It
not
felt
a
like they
winner
just
team.
wanted them
Yeah.
to do something.
Yeah,
I
make
think
us
this
proud.
season's a success. I'm gonna.
Like I don't know
We'll
if
get-
it's hard
I
not
do.
to notice, but when you're in the Rock and the Devils have the puck, if it's been a while since they've scored, the fans every single time, Dougie Hamilton, it happens the most.
You start
for.
to inch out of your seat a little.
Every
bit.
time he touches the puck, the whole building is just shoot,
Yeah.
and it's we know he knows he has to shoot the puck at the net, but it builds so much, and then eventually the whole building is just do something positive, because obviously if they get scored on 3 times or get shut out at home again, the fans would not be happy about that.
Right. That the desperation was noticeable not only for the fans but with the players, because they started that first period in Game 3 really hard, and it took a long stretch pass from Palat, who he's Andre Palat. He's not the same player he used to be, frankly, but I'll tell you what, he was pretty good in this series. Not good enough to be making the money he's making.
He's an unsung hero all
Yeah,
season, though,
just-
I would say. But
right.
yeah, a little too much money for an unsung hero.
Can't just be a guy who digs pucks out of the corners and makes a nice stretch pass here and there. He's got to be providing more. But he found Timo Meier. He found Nico Hischier. It was a great team goal. Then they go up 2-0 on another really good team goal. Bratt forces his way through the net. Mercer scores. And I'm thinking, this is the Devils team we need to play. You need to take Carolina's speed out of the game. And then they took a bunch of penalties in the third period, and they let Carolina bring it back. And I'm thinking, this is so Devils. They're going to blow it. But how about Simone Nemec to be the hero? When Jonathan Kovacevic went down in that first period, they're playing 5D. One of them is playing in basically his playoff debut.
Nemec, it was his playoff debut. It was his first playoff game ever.
First playoff game ever. You think they were going to restrict his minutes. They have no choice but not to. Same thing with Siegenthaler. Was going to play restricted minutes, and he ends up playing almost the season high in minutes. Brian Dumoulin plays 37 minutes, who I was very critical of in terms of that deadline acquisition. I'm like, we got so many defensemen. Why do we need another defenseman?
Yeah.
And then all the defensemen got injured, and I was like, okay, we needed this defenseman. And then he ends up being...
Fitz knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Yes and no. We'll talk about that. He got that one right. Dumoulin was so important in the end, and he had to be. He was fantastic. And they dominated the overtime. They dominated overtime, dominated double overtime. They needed that win. They got that win. And then game 4, they were right there too, right? They down a couple goals. They brought it back, made it 3-1, then 3-2. They had the feeling in the building. And then that's where the special teams really needed to come through, I thought.
There were a couple moments.
You get a power play goal in game 4 to tie that at 3-3. They had a couple chances. It didn't go their way. And then an early empty netter. I mean, they were awful with the empty net this series. Awful.
Yeah.
I understand going early if you're Sheldon Keefe.
But they were just
minutes,
getting scored on like the first 30
Dougie
seconds.
Hamilton just makes one stretch pass and immediately puts it in the path of Sebastian Aho. And I'm thinking, if you're going to go empty net with 3.5 minutes, you got to take care of the puck. And that's just not what they did. So they found a way themselves, really, to not work it out. This Carolina team, they have the intangibles. They really do. I believe that. And game 4, flipped, though, when Frederik Andersen came out of the game. That was a massive turning point in the series.
Yeah, that was a really
a
weird point in that game, too, because he kind of, like, the contact happens, and then the play goes to the other end of the ice. And so they're back in the Devil's zone, but then the whistles go, and everybody's like, what is going on? And then you just kind of look back to the other end of the ice, and Andersen is literally just, like, face down in the goal.
Yeah.
Like, for a second. And I was like, oh, that's a problem. He gets looked at for like 2 minutes, and the Devils fans were just booing the entire time.
Yeah.
It was basically a timeout for the Hurricanes without it being a timeout. But, of course, Andersen was injured on the contact with Meyer.
And he is day-to-day now. So
yeah, but
not a guarantee he'll be available for round 2.
Kochetkov isn't a bad...
He's a serviceable backup.
He's not a bad goalie to come in, but I think the opportunity for the Devils was that he was coming into that game ice cold. And to not be able to figure him out the rest of the way, it really just... I mean, did they got him twice, right? I think. Or how many goals did Andersen give up before he came out?
Andersen had given up just the one. And
okay,
then
yeah.
Timo Meyer scored almost immediately on Kochetkov, and that was added a little bit more intrigue.
Yeah,
to
and
the
that
whole
was
thing
that was the goal where he
Meyer,
just spun around and fired it at the net.
Yes,
from right off the
faceoff.
face.
He was unsighted. He couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Look, Kochetkov carried the load for Carolina in the regular season because Andersen was out for a lot of it. He's been dealing with a knee thing for a while, but Kochetkov is he's not just a backup. He's a starter for most teams in the National Hockey League. He is that good. Andersen is expected to practice by the end of the week, but is considered day-to-day with that injury. I mean, Kochetkov is more than serviceable. He's a starter for a lot of teams, but Andersen was playing out of his mind. He really was. He was that good. He's a playoff performer, and it has been for a while. With the exception of that overtime goal he gave up to Nemec, he was excellent in that series.
And I don't even know if, yes, he was excellent, but the Devils also just did not do a great job outside of that third game getting pucks to the net. They couldn't get pucks there.
I thought games 2, 3, and 4 they did a game. I mean, granted, he did not play in game 5.
There were
games
stretches
2 through 5 we saw better.
There were certainly
offense.
stretches of play during these games when the Devils got they started to connect on a couple of passes, and then it'd be like a 5 or 6 minute flurry where they get 5 or 6, maybe 7 shots on net. But you look at the shot differential, and Carolina always has at least 10 more or 15 more shots than the Devils so consistently.
That's just that's their MO.
You just toss it at the net.
Yeah.
And it works. It does work. If the volume is there, the puck will find the back of the net. And the Devils figured that out as the series went on. But again, that could be sort of a that could be the gear thing you were talking about in game 1, where it looked like game 1 looked like a lot of those games from the regular season where the Devils just kind of weren't really all there. like mentally, because like they're kind of skating around, but when it comes to like passing, especially in the neutral zone, they just go through the motions. And even like entering the zone, they have
the
no
zone
like
entry, they horrible without
all
Jack
season.
Hughes.
Without Jack Hughes, like he can't just knife through. But like their alternative is, we're just gonna dump it in every single time, just chip in, and go change. Like there's no initiative. The only time I saw initiative on a zone entry after a dump in was from like the third or fourth line when Justin Dowling is like going into the corner.
Yeah, that started the OT goal.
Exactly. That is the only time when we saw the dump and chase actually work in this series, and they were trying to do it the entire time.
I think they were just bad at picking and choosing when to dump and chase and when to try to go through because every time they try, unless it was Bratt or maybe Hischier or maybe Nemitz actually trying to skate through the zone.
Nemitz actually had some really good entries.
Nemitz had the best zone entries of the entire team. I think apart from those three guys, they had no choice but to dump and chase because they just couldn't get through that very good neutral zone defense of
Carolina.
Of
they have a lot of really good sticks.
Dude,
they're really good hands.
Jordan Stahl was on
line.
the ice every time Nico Hischier was out there. And like Jordan Stahl, you could say what you will about his skill as a player. Tough guy to play against. And underrated.
The top lines matched well between these two teams, but that's a problem for the Devils because when the top two lines get neutralized, there's zero depth on the third and fourth line.
So I'll tell you what. They didn't have the score. I mean, you look at they only scored more than 3 goals in game 5, and 3 of them came in the first 10 minutes on a goaltender that they were taking advantage of. I thought Kochekov is good. Had a great season. The Devils absolutely identified that he was a weakness when he went in. The drop off from Anderson to Kochekov was big. I think that's going to be a problem for Carolina if Anderson is not available against Washington. Absolutely, it will. But this was never going to be the Devils' year. We've acknowledged that. Jack Hughes, a healthy Jonas Siegenthaler, maybe they change a couple things here and there, but the wheels fell off the wagon post-Christmas for this Devils team.
Yeah.
Their last big moment, they had a few big moments in the back half of the season, of course, but their last real big hurrah was that dominating win over the Rangers at home.
That was the last moment when I still thought the Stanley Cup was possible.
Was in reach.
That killed my Stanley Cup hopes.
Yeah. And in many ways, it killed the Devils too, because that was the last
that was the last time
it came.
They did anything. They went on that Christmas break, and that was it. But it was over.
That was bad.
To talk about the push they made in Game 4 made people proud. They came back in that game.
Honestly,
they were within a goal.
That changed the entire complexion of the series.
Yeah.
Winning Game 3 and then fighting it out in Game 4. I feel like it kind of changed. Like the whole fan base, I kind of felt was ready to kind of just totally dunk on this team if they got swept. But winning a game and then battling it out in Game 5,
in the adversity,
double overtime in Game 5, and being right there to forcing it back to the Rock, that changed everything, and it made the outlook afterwards just so much more positive.
Well, to remind folks what happened in Game 5, Devils go up 3-0. Controversial penalty to Cody Glass at the end of the first. The carryover time, Carolina figures it out 3-1 early in that period. Then
floodgates.
They get another. It's 3-2. Maybe you think Markstrom going cross ice. It goes through the wickets. He gets a pad on it. You'd really want him to make that save, ideally. Doesn't happen. Sheldon Keefe says,
third
all right,
one's rough.
Calm down. Let's take a timeout. Then they take a penalty. Then they take another penalty. And what was this? Was it to make it 4-4? Was that the 5-on-3, or was it to make it 3-3 the 5-on-3?
Ooh.
Because there was a couple of lead changes in that second period that it gets hard to remember when you give up 4 goals. But the point being, they took bad penalties. Controversial because when they were already taking a penalty, Eric Haula gets the stick underneath the knee of Sebastian Aho. Aho goes down, makes a bit of a meal out of it. There was shouts for an embellishment. I thought it was a trip and maybe a given embellishment. I don't know, but there was a bit of inconsistency in some of the calls. I don't think the Devils would have had the series regardless. Maybe they would have won Game 5, but eventually it's 3-3. Within 3 or so minutes, Carolina scores 3 goals.
That evil man Svechnikov.
And I'll tell you what, Svechnikov, unbelievable series from him.
I really had to watch a hat trick from Svechnikov at the Rock.
Yeah.
I love Svechnikov.
Brutal. And then early
I don't anymore.
Early in
I don't know why I like him.
Early in the aftermath of
Actually, I do.
having that game of having the game tied up, this is actually, for me, is one of the bigger moments of the whole series, is that this Devils team clobbered. They're getting battered. They have no chances in this period. And then out of nothing, a good fight behind the net, the puck squirts free to the slot, and Nico Hischier tags this one into the top corner.
Dude,
just
regular season, that like being up 3-0 and then giving up 3 goals in the second period, that is a recipe for a 6-3 loss in the regular season.
Yeah.
Watching Nico Hischier score the 4th goal to give the Devils the lead back, I was like, oh, wow, this is a completely different game.
Yeah. And it didn't swing the momentum anywhere back into the Devils' favor. They gave up a tying goal shortly thereafter. And I believe that one was on the 5-on-3. But that's the name of the show. But
I was waiting for that.
But I still think that moment from Nico made me proud that like they weren't going to crumble here, that they found a way to make it a game, and then
no goals for 40 minutes.
And look, you could say what you will about the second and third goals from Markstrom. He made 37 straight saves before they got eliminated in that double overtime. Unbelievable third period from him. Some of the best, like he was pulling out saves, and I literally turned to my friends when I was watching and I said, This guy is flying around in the goal like Marty Brodeur.
The first overtime period was ridiculous because the Devils only had like 4 shots by like really 16-3, but Markstrom was so elite. He was locked in that overtime.
And the best chance of the entire overtime was with 2 seconds left. Kochetkov doesn't have his stick, is out of the goal. It falls to Bratt on the half wall. He doesn't even looking. He just fires it at a net that he thinks might be empty. And this one was going into the top shelf. Kochetkov slides across and saves it with the bare hand of his blocker side. Unbelievable save from Kochetkov. It was the one moment he was really called into action in the overtime period. And then it's a double.
Markstrom have a crazy one like that too.
Markstrom had he
was like way out of the crease.
Markstrom had one where he came out, made a kick save, turned, made a second kick save, and then dove across and gloved the shot that was going in empty net. Unreal stuff. He redeemed himself for what was an underwhelming first or second period from him. I thought maybe it was time to bring in Jake Allen, and we were talking about this yesterday. Sheldon Keefe trusted in his starting goaltender, and that was a decision that paid off. Unfortunately, the game didn't go their way, and largely because of a consequential double overtime call. I mean, the Devils were never going to – they would have had to have gotten a super lucky bounce if they were going to win with the way that the overtime periods were going. Carolina was just feeling it. 16-3 in shots after the first overtime.
It's a miracle they got out of the first overtime.
Doesn't make sense how they did.
And then, second OT, 4 minutes in, Dawson Mercer gets caught trying to chip the puck into the zone. The thing they've been trying to do the entire series, and it hasn't worked. But yeah, he tries to chip it into the zone, and the stick goes a little wild up high. Catch it. Who did he catch?
Kokeniemi.
Yeah, he catches Kokeniemi in the face and draws blood.
Drew a lot of blood
pretty quick. It's a double minor all day long from the office, I think, just because it drew blood. You can't ignore that.
That's a stupid rule.
It was a tough one not to call.
Exactly.
It would have felt
it's a tough one not to call.
The blood thing. I'm saying the blood thing. We're living in a league where people don't high stick others intentionally anymore, and a vicious high stick cannot draw blood, but a less vicious high stick can draw blood, and then you get 4 minutes for I think that's I don't like the two.
And on a call that he wasn't even it wasn't a high sticking his stick shouldn't have been there.
It was the way the stick
his stick
hit,
was it was the follow through of the chip.
Yeah,
so,
and this part of your body always draws blood, right here when you get hit on the eyebrow.
So and this is another caveat to add to the discussion. In Game 4, when Anderson went down, the refs on the ice gave Timo Meier a 5-minute penalty because that gave them the opportunity to look at it and downgrade it either to a minor or cancel out the penalty altogether. And that's what they did. They canceled it out. But when they went to review the Mercer penalty, they gave a double minor on the ice, which means you can only review for a double minor or it nicks it entirely. I would have been fine with just 2 minutes for that. Obviously, you draw blood. That's the rule. But because of the follow-through, this and that, I think double minor maybe a bit harsh. I would have given a penalty for that. It looked bad. It would have been really harsh not to give a penalty. They took a guy, got a stick up into his eye. That happens.
It would be interesting. I don't remember.
Especially because the Devils did so well to kill the first 2 minutes. They got clear after clear.
They got through the first 2 minutes, right?
And then the first bit of established possession time in the O-zone, 30 seconds, pass, one-timer for Aho. Markstrom's unsighted, and he has every right to be livid, especially after Hischier made a big shot block. He's laboring over to try to cover Aho, and he can't. Just a heartbreaking way to lose in a game where they gave everything. But with the adversity stacked up against them, with the way that they had played, even when healthy going into the playoffs, and then when they were unhealthy going into the playoffs, it just wasn't going to be the year for the Devils, unfortunately. Tucker.
Yeah. I mean, you said it all there. They battled tooth and nail in this series.
Tooth and nail.
To an extent that I wasn't really expecting, because it could have been so easy for this team to just roll over and die to Carolina because they were that much better. Could have been a sweep very easily, but the Devils didn't they didn't want to go down like that. They took a game, made Game 4 interesting, made Game 5 really interesting, but they still go down because it was inevitable that they were going to go down, but they went down in one of the best ways possible, I think. Special teams just betrayed them in this case. Power play goes completely blank. Best PK in the year for Carolina, but Hischier leaves everything out there. Most guys kind of just did their thing, not really like making too big of an impact. Like Jesper Bratt did pretty normal things, but in a series where, again, the Devils weren't expected to do anything. Like I would rather like Jesper Bratt not try to like kill himself trying to do everything like Nico Hischier did this series, but he's the captain, so that makes sense. But Nico Hischier like nearly injured himself several times this series, just trying to squeeze every last bit of energy out of himself and his teammates. And you saw it. You saw it in the display on the ice after the series was over. Nico Hischier is on his hands and knees on the ice, like trying to catch his breath after literally leaving his heart on the ice. And what killed me too, we talked about it a bit before the show, Timo Meier, he had literally just turned the corner. He was getting hot. He was starting to throw the puck at the net, and he was right there to getting into his wheelhouse of production, but there just wasn't enough time.
I think you need more than 3 guys. Those guys came to play for New Jersey, and they showed up when they needed to. Like Jesper Bratt caught a lot of criticism for not being good enough in the playoffs in 2022-23. I don't think he was fantastic in this series, but he was good enough to suffice his role in the team.
Yeah.
Nico Hischier was excellent.
The top
great.
6 is totally safe, I think, this offseason.
I think the second line,
but it's the bottom 6 that it might be getting the boot.
I think
there's several guys who have played their last game in the black and red.
I think that's brings us to how we're going to conclude this episode, is talking about what the Devils need to address in terms of getting past this hurdle that is the Carolina Hurricanes, which has been the Devils' hurdle in not only 2025, but in 2023, in 2009, 2006, and 2001 as well, or maybe 2002. I think maybe 2002, if I recall correctly, but one of those seasons. I mean, Carolina just has the Devils' number. They are the Devils' kryptonite in the playoffs in many ways. And you mentioned that the bottom 6 needs retooling, and they absolutely do. I think there's like a Paul Cotter, a Stefan Nason. I know we have maybe differing opinions on Dawson Mercer, but I think he can fit nicely on a third line with a good center. Cotter and Nason, I think, 3 third or fourth line guys in their own rights. But I think Erik Haula,
he's
big
the
fan
outlier.
of him. I think he's an outlier in terms of making more than $3 million. Tough to find out what his role on this team would be moving forward.
And
Cody
he's a
Glass,
UFA in 2026-27. So, Haula looks like he looks like trade value where, I mean, we talked about this before the show too, where like a team could probably take him and pay half of his salary for the end of the season, which, he's only making $3 million, but any amount of money is good to help the cap for the Devils. And
I'll tell you what, Cody Glass is playing in that third line center role as a restricted free agent. I think I would like to say that they could find someone better in that role, but not the end of the world if he takes up that position again, like as the third line center. I'm not totally moved by that, but I do think they need to bring another scorer into that top 6. When Jack Hughes comes back, I mean, Arseny Gritsyuk coming in from Russia is probably going to get an entry-level deal. You expect him to be at the NHL level. But Brock Besser is a free agent. There's been talks of the Devils and Brock Besser for a while. I think that's something that they're going to have to explore. But then the blue line becomes a whole conversation. You got to re-sign Luke Hughes. That's going to be a lot of money to term, you expect. Dougie Hamilton's making $9 million. Coming off the injury, didn't have the season that you'd hoped he would have. But that's a guy that you might have to think about moving on from. Brendan Dillon making $4 million. He's
actually,
injured.
they
Jonathan
can't even
Kovacevic,
unless Dougie Hamilton agrees to it.
Waives a no movement clause, and Eric Halla has a no movement clause as well for a number of teams.
What about Mika for Hamilton?
Mika for Hamilton? No thanks.
Yeah, you guys can keep that guy.
Yeah.
Just had to make sure my 2 cents was that.
I'm pretty sure Brat does not like Zibanejad, even though they played on the same Sweden team. I don't think they like each other.
Brad had to play on the third line while Zibanejad's taking the opening faceoff. How's that fair? How's that make sense?
Maybe just for Brad and I have something in common because Lydia doesn't like Mika Zibanejad.
Are you the best player in the NHL?
There you go.
Mika.
Because Jesper Bratt is the best player in the NHL.
JPIT, BPIT, NHL.
Oh, that was a layup.
I think that the Devils, they have Tom Fitzgerald. They've got some stuff to figure out. On the blue line, guys like Casey Nemitz and Luke Hughes, are you going to try to fit those guys in? What contract are you going to give Luke Hughes? What does the future look like for guys like Jonathan Kovacevic, Dougie Hamilton, Brendan Dillon? I think Pesci, Siegenthaler, those are guys you hopefully want to build around for a little while longer.
Yeah.
And then in goal, Jake Allen was fantastic this year. His contract's up. Do you ride with Nico Dawes as the backup? Markstrom's got 1 more year.
Nico Dawes also has 1 more year, so I think it'd be totally it'd be fine to just have him stick around. Especially he's only making $812,000.
Serviceable backup for sure. I've liked Nico Dawes for a little while now.
And reportedly from the exit interviews today, Nico Dawes said that one of his friends just bought a gym. So he's going to get jacked this offseason.
Huge. Love that. Good for Nico Dawes.
This is
awesome.
the reporting I needed.
Yeah, this is you're getting all the good scoops, guys.
So Nico Dawes is going to be jacked next year, playing behind Jacob Markstrom. And
he's already a big guy.
He's going to be so big that you actually can't get the puck into the net because it's just Nico Dawes.
He just covers all
like
the
angles. Walrus from the Geico ad.
Yeah.
Just like sitting in the net.
He's going to be bodying those defenders in front or offensive players. Yeah.
That's the solution for Carolina.
What I will end the show with, though, Lydia, something you brought up is whether or not the Devils had a successful season. You said yes. And considering the adversity that they went through, especially at the end and in the playoffs, they made me proud, right? I'm disappointed they couldn't get it done, but I understand. I'm a realist, and they did make me proud with the effort they put in and what they were able to get out of that Game 3, especially with 5D and all the adversity. But the expectations coming into the season, with the new goaltending, with how good they were through the end of December, I have to say that this was an underwhelming season from the New Jersey Devils. In a year where the Metropolitan Division opened up as much as it did, and part of the reason we called it so open is because the Devils weren't as good as they should be, and several other teams weren't as well, who shall remain nameless.
You can say it. They were terrible.
But I was still left a little bit, with a bad taste in my mouth with the way the regular season went. There was a point where I was like, this Devils team should be good, but it's getting hard to watch. Like the vibes were so bad at certain points that I was like, I'm not so sure I want to dedicate all my time watching this team. I know there was a lot of fans who were starting to feel a little bit apathetic about the club. And
was it Sheldon Keefe?
No, because I think Sheldon Keefe did everything he could with the roster. I think part of it was just it had become very clear for a long while that the team was not built to be successful beyond a certain level. And once that started to come to fruition and they just couldn't get out of those habits, I think a lot of people turned away from the team. But when they made it back to the playoffs, people started to believe again. And then they showed in Game 2 that they could hang with the Hurricanes. And then in Game 3, they gave everybody belief. And, I mean, that was an unbelievable feeling. And I'll never forget being in the press box during that game. The first time I've ever done a playoff game for the Devils at The Rock. And that was just an unbelievable, very special feeling personally for me, just having, adored that team for as long and getting to be there, in the room where it happens for my Hamilton heads out there.
I was just listening to Hamilton before this.
There you go.
For no reason.
There you go. And that was a special thing that I have to give great thanks to Bobby Chaffardini and the station for getting the opportunity to have done that for the past 3 seasons. And of course to sports manager and 2025 Marty Glickman award winner Lou Orlando.
Woo.
And assistant Will Talent.
Babe.
Thanks to those guys for giving me the memories that'll last a lifetime. But I do wish the Devils could have done that little bit more.
Yeah. They could like double OT.
Yeah, I mean they did as much as
they could have sent it back. You were
going
to go to Game 6 if they sent it back. So
yeah, that would have been special. But Tucker, I mean, this was your first season as the tenured Devils beat reporter as well. I mean, I imagine some of the same sort of feelings from you.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the. I'm proud of the fight that they put on against the Carolina Hurricanes because the odds were absolutely stacked against them. The whole just between injuries and we've been talking about it this whole time, but really there was not a path for the Devils to get out of the first round. Yeah. But winning a game and going to double overtime twice, like you get a double overtime win. First of all, the longest overtime game in the Rock, ever goes to double overtime.
I was in Newark till 1 a.m.
And Simone Nemitz,
that was dope.
OT winner,
and I had been critical of him for a while, but
his celebration was awesome. Just pure joy on his face in the photo. It's unbelievable. Like I can honestly walk away from this season smiling because, I mean, hey, it's a 10-point improvement. 81 points last year, 91 points this year. New head coach Sheldon Keefe, new players who are going to come back next year. This is only the beginning for the New Jersey Devils now.